On May 1st, 2011, and into the next morning, I had this experience that I always refer to as my God experience, where God put his hand on me, and I had this experience that changed my life. And quite possibly, I lost my mind that night. It took me many years to process. The only thing that I could think about for many years was that experience. What did it mean? What was the significance? Where did God end and I begin? What do I call these feelings? How do I describe these uh, ideas? And more than that, during that experience, which was very much like Moses' burning bush experience in the Bible, I was told that I would someday, that I would have to be out there and present myself in front of all the people and talk about this. And at the time, it terrified me because was, I was of that camp where I considered myself spiritual but not religious. And I had so much self-programmed hatred towards religious syntax and ideas that the concept of being dangled out there for the whole world to hate in the name of God terrified me. And so I didn't do anything other than tell close few relatives about what I saw. And then as I continued not to tell anybody, I began to have these dreams. And these dreams changed the nature of the vision I saw. Where in my initial vision, I had this amazing sense that everything was going to be okay because there was this victory. And it was this profound victory of God versus evil. And we would all witness it. And because we witnessed it, all the suffering and all the worlds would be justified, and there would be all the yeses and all the feels, and it would be all good. But about a year after, I hadn't done anything, and I started to have these dreams about a different type of future, and I began to have these visions of a different type of ending. And it really kicked my butt in gear. And I felt I had this intrinsic duty to tell this story while launching a company and while fathering a child. And while I was supposed to be doing all these important things, I was pretty much consumed by this idea that I had to tell people this story. And granted, it wasn't the time. I only had my experience. I didn't have the 2020 retrospect. And coming upon the 10-year anniversary of that experience, maybe 9-year anniversary of that experience, now there's more information. But in 2017, I was living in Dallas, Texas, and I had heard this podcast about this man who suffers from sleep paralysis. And so I reached out to the producers, right? I reached out to the producers and I was like, hey, I know a lot about this shit. And I don't want to tell you all my story because how do I summarize that? And so they nicely wrote back and, they showed some interest. And so I purged on them. I mean, I unloaded about 20 years worth of nonsense. I mean, I can't call it nonsense. That you give somebody an email that's talking about prophecy and your experience with God and the devil and all these things, and like, how's somebody supposed to read that, right? And so they turned me down. They said, and very nicely, we don't see the story here. And so I felt compelled to share my story. Back then, I had been telling people for a decade, like, this is my story. This is the only thing that's on my mind. This is the thing that I got to get off my chest. Hear me out. And so when they turned me down, I grabbed my microphone and I asked my best friend Chuck and my friend Ose if they would be open to letting me record a conversation. And so these were people who had never, like, I grew up with Chuck and I just met Ose, and so none of them really knew my whole story, but Chuck remembered, like, the beginning of it. And so he was there in these times where there was a lot of weird stuff going on in our teenage years. And so I was catching him up on what happened after high school. And I want to play this clip for you. And I want you, if you're in a shelter-in-place situation, to give it a listen.
It's on a beach, and I had been there before. There's this guy looking like Fabio, like red skin, long blonde hair, white Miami Vice kind of tuxedo shirt, open shirt, and he's with this assistant. He's looking over the sea, and I'm like, I don't want him to see me, dude. I'm just like, I knew that's my enemy. He's manifested himself in a couple ways, but he's always kind of just like that. Miami Vice, like white, blonde haired money. And but he's just like, he's symbolic of my enemy. And he brings along with him this police state culture. I know that because, like, when I start flying again, I start teaming up with other people, these people in dreams, that are also part of like this rebellion against this police state. Like I'm seeing the police cops. It looks like LA. I'm flying over rooftops. This other guy can go underground like a mole and bury himself. It's like we're fucking superheroes and chipmunks, like it was ridiculous, but it's a dream.
So I wonder how many of you in lockdown or in shelter in place and you're living in LA and you're feeling like they're telling you can't go outside, and you hear this clip talking about this red-skinned money man who brings with him this police state. I recorded this 3 years ago, and I had it on my podcast, which I titled The Spirit Ambassador. But when I realized that the person I had been dreaming about was Donald Trump, I ended up canceling my Libsyn account. One, because, there's only a handful of downloads. There's only a handful of traffic, and I figured, if God wanted my testament to go viral, it would have happened, right? It would have happened. But then when I saw that, like, Donald Trump was, in my dream of, this person that I might have to go against, my logical mind said, in what scenario ever would I be against this guy? Because I'm not a hater. I don't hate Donald Trump. I actually respect him in a number of ways. But with that said, the seed was planted. I'm like, what if it's God's plan that somehow I am going to take this house? What would my solutions be? Like, beyond give everybody mushroom water? Like, realistically, like, what could I do? And so I'd been preparing for 4 years, like, this idea of, like, what would I do if I could move the momentum of our nation's intention and produce results. And, ultimately I came up with some pretty sound shit. Lifting up the lowest common denominator through education and basically creating our own national internet structure that citizens own. And in order for businesses to engage in bombard us with their content, they have to pay into it, and we all have a portion of that money available to us every day. And so it's not socialism, it's capitalism, and we all get in business with each other and make it official, right? And I guess that's the heart of it. And I'm not going to charge you for it, but I am going to make you ask for it. I invite the scrutiny. I have recordings from that I did on my phone, just like this one, on the night I was touched. I mean, I have emails that I sent out. There's a paper trail, and I think that if you knew that there was still magic in this world, that in this time where all of you are like, what the fuck, that you see how God works. And it's not just clumsy coincidence. This is intentional. I have been working with God half my life, and I have been plotting for this moment for at least a decade. And I've been talking about it for at least 3. Wrap your head around that. And do you think I'm the only one? In this clip, I talk about others that I join up with. Where are you guys at? In search of superheroes. Apply within. Over and out.